Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, I will be talking about a very bad news actually, which is gonna be about the US debts. It's not gonna be pretty because US debts is at the point where there is no return, and if they want to do something about it, it has to be now. If not, anything above this point would be unsavable. In fact, this point of time where the debts is at right now is already very hard to save. So let's talk about the details about how bad this situation is so we can all have the full grasp of what's going on. And now to my first point, which is the current federal overspending and its impact. So basically in February, the projections for how much the Federal Reserve is going to overspend is at 1.69 trillion. But right now, the projection has changed to 1.9 trillion. So basically what it's saying is that the amount of profit that the government's going to get from taxes this year is about 4.9 trillion, and they're going to spend around 6.8 trillion by the end of this year as projection. And that's why it brings us to a additional 1.9 trillion overspending, which would turn to debts. And why is this happening? Because there's a lot of unexpected, uncalculated spending where they have to provide spending for countries like Ukraine, Israel, and so on, militarily, and funding their wars. And also they have a lot of spendings that they have to bail out banks. Specifically, they're going to spend about 70 billion to bail out some banks from bankruptcy. And also they will have to spend about 100 billion on a unexpected student loan forgiveness. And all of this combined together is a very unexpected spending that would cause the Federal Reserve to do a lot of new budgeting, because these budgets were not put into the initial number in the first place, and then they'll slowly discover the amount of money they have to spend along the way, which is really bad. And on to my second point, which is the federal debt and its consequences. So right now, USA is has about 34 trillion dollars in debt and still counting. So these money they owe to countries, institutions, and investors. So as they continue to borrow money, the interest, not just the debt increase, but the interest increase as well. So this year, they're going to spend about $892 billion just on paying off interest. And they're going to spend about $849 billion on the country's defenses. So basically now, they're spending more on paying off their debts interest, not even the debts, than they are spending on actual things like the country's defenses. And by next year, the projection is that they're going to spend even more on paying off interest, not the debt, interest, than the country's Medicare. So basically, right now, in the next year and this year, they will officially surpass the spendings for the military defenses and for the Medicare of the country, just by paying off interest. And this is how bad the situation is. Just imagine a person that is in a credit card debt and they fall deeper and deeper in it because they're using credit card to pay off their credit card, and they cannot pay off the actual amount anymore. And that's the situation that the government is in right now. So basically, they cannot even pay off the essentials of the country for services and for like actual essential services and program, but they have to pay off this interest that they have compiled because of the amount of debts they have. And now to my third point, which is historical context and future projections. So for the past 20 years, the federal government has consistently been overspending. So out of 70 years, the government has run a deficit on 61 of those years. And the one who started the record was George Bush. So George Bush, he was the first person who was able to break records on debts for America. And moving on was Obama, which he broke his record. And Donald Trump broke Obama's record, and Joe Biden is no better. He's on the way to breaking Donald Trump's record. So this is really bad because each generation down, they're just doing worse and worse and worse, and they're not really finding a solution to this problem. So basically, there was a projection for a 10-year outcome, and that is that in 10 years time, US is going to be in 50 trillion in debts. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that this is an understatement because, like I've said previously, the projections in February for this year's overspending is about 1.7 trillion, but they move it to 1.9 trillion, and it's just July. So that's about 5 months later, they changed their projections. Just think about 10 years in, multiplying. It's not plus, it's multiplying. So you don't really know what they say. They're gonna add about 22 trillion new debts, but it's probably more. It's probably more, and that's really bad. So especially with Donald Trump, if he gets elected for the next election, he has this Trump tax cut campaign thingy, which started in 2017. That would increase the deficit in the country by $1 trillion more. So that would be really bad for the country. And on to my fourth point, which is inflation dilemma and wealth inequality. So they say, some people will say, well, the government can just print their way out, so it's fine. Well, let's just not even talk about when they have to bail themselves out, when they're no longer the strongest country in the world. Let's just not talk about that. Let's just say that they remain the strongest country in the world forever. Theoretical situation. There's still gonna be a huge problem. The problem is that when the government print money, it strikes inflation. It spikes inflation, and when it spikes inflation, this type of inflation don't work equally among people. So the poor, let's just say, print money. They get about 1,002 raise to their salary. I mean, not that amount, but by little, they get about 1,002 of the amount of money that's actually printed. That's how much they're distributed, 1,002. But for the rich, like CEOs or governments, they get 100 millions. Okay, so basically, you're just cutting the value of money even smaller and then distributing an even bigger portion to the rich and the middle. So in the middle class and the lower class, well, they're just gonna suffer even more. They're gonna suffer even more, and that's why inflation don't work equally in society. Furthermore, you are gonna devalue the money, the dollars. So basically, dollar is gonna lose its value, and when it does, people are gonna have less spending power. So what's the point of adding about 1,002 to their bank account when that 1,002 is no longer capable of doing what they used to be able to do without this 1,002? If you get what I mean. While at the same time, the rich has an even bigger portion that they can spend even more. They may have, but even though the money has devalued, means that they can spend less on the same amount, but they have even more, if you know what I mean, because the value is always existent at a certain amount. Okay, the value stays the same. It's just the numbers changing. So people will lose purchasing power. Inflation don't work equally. This is going to completely destroy people in America. So that's a really bad idea. So you can't just constantly print money without the consequences. And now on my fifth point, which is the urgent need of action. So let's just sum it up. What have I just said? How in need of action is this? Let's just put it this way, okay? $34 trillion. How long would that theoretically say the government is able to pay it off? Well, they're already spending so much on just interest, And in my opinion, it is practically impossible to maintain the amount of spending they have for military, Medicare, student loans, and so on. Any sort of logical spending for the country in advancement there's no way they can control these advancement and these spendings in the same pace of other superpower countries like China, also on, while 100% focusing on paying off debts. If you're saying that they're gonna spend like 90% of their money to pay off debts, that's unrealistic. So you cannot say they're gonna spend about 4.9 trillion, which is the amount of money they get from taxes, to just every year pay it off. Now, even if that's the case, they would take at least 7 years, okay? But that's really, really unrealistic, because they're going to take as minimum amount as they can to pay off these debts. And even as they are, it is already increasing slowly. It's gonna hit 1 trillion soon for interest. Interest is gonna hit 1 trillion. So that's crazy. So they're gonna have to pay it back. Oh, by the way, when I say 7 years, that doesn't include interest yet. So probably 10 years, at least, very least. So let's just put it this way. They put 100% effort in paying off debts, 10 years, but they cannot do that. So they won't do that, actually. How long is that going to take? Just have a theoretical estimate in your mind. A very, very long time, right? So that's a really, really bad situation for America. And the only reason they can keep printing money without solving any of the consequence that actually comes with it is because they're one of the strongest country in the world, and nobody's gonna say, hey, America, stop printing money, right? So they're gonna keep doing that until they're not the strongest country in the world. And when that happens, they have to actually pay off their debts, right? And they're gonna go down really, really quickly. It's gonna be like a snowball. You accumulated so much, So that's just a little bit of a grasp of what is actually going on and how bad the situation is. And that is also why America has to take action right now. This should be a really, really much discussed topic. Anyways, moving on to my conclusion. So putting on conclusion together, the Federal Reserve the government of America is now in debt in about $34 trillion and still counting. Gonna be more than 50 trillion in 10 years time, and that's considered optimistic of them to consider that. And interest is going higher than actual spendings on useful things in America. Everybody is going to suffer as they print more money. So how more worse can the situation get? Much worse. That's why they have to take action. And I hope you are well aware of the situation so we can both take action. The only way to solve this problem realistically is to have more money. So we have to solve that problem first for ourselves. Anyways, I hope you learned something out of this video. I hope you are well informed. I hope you're happy with what I'm saying. I hope you like and subscribe. I hope you come back again. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.